What if I told you there's a bridge in Chicago where people vanished without a trace, where crashes made no sense, and bodies were found beneath the fog? Some call it cursed. Others believe the truth is far darker. Before we dive deeper into this mystery, make sure you subscribe for more chilling unsolved stories. Don't forget to like, share, and press the bell icon so you never miss what the streets are hiding. Chicago has always been a city of steel and stone, where bridges rise like arteries connecting neighborhoods divided by rivers and railroads. But among the dozens that stretch across the city, there's one bridge that locals whisper about only in hushed tones. By day, it looks ordinary, just another aging piece of infrastructure shadowed by the skyline. But by night, especially when the fog rolls in from the river, the atmosphere changes. The iron seems heavier, the shadows longer, a silence settles in that feels unnatural, as if the bridge itself is holding its breath. It is here that strange deaths, disappearances, and inexplicable accidents have been recorded for more than half a century. The first official report dates back to the late 1960s, when a young couple driving home from a late-night movie never made it across. Their car was discovered smashed against the guardrail, the front end hanging halfway off the side. But when police opened the doors, the seats were empty. No blood, no sign of impact inside the vehicle, just silence, as if the two passengers had stepped out of existence. Search teams combed the waters below for days, but their bodies were never found. The case was ruled an accident, but the officers who responded admitted privately that they had never seen anything like it. "It looked staged," one of them reportedly said. "Like someone placed the car there, but forgot the people." Through the 1970s and 80s, the bridge gained a reputation. Truck drivers swore they saw figures darting in front of them in the mist, only to vanish when their headlights hit. Pedestrians walking home from late shifts claimed they heard footsteps following them, always a step behind, yet when they turned, no one was there. Most chilling of all were the drownings. Time and again, bodies were pulled from the river beneath. Women, even children though, many had no connection to the area and no clear explanation for how they ended up there. For families, it became a cruel pattern. A loved one missing, the police finding no leads. Then weeks later, a body recovered at the foot of the same bridge. Still, officials brushed it off. Chicago is a city built on tough realism, and for decades, any talk of curses or hauntings was laughed away as urban legend. But the stories persisted. In 1993, a police diver pulled from the waters below was reported saying something strange to his captain before collapsing from exhaustion. "They're down there, all of them, and they don't want to let go." He refused to elaborate later, dismissing it as stress from the dive. But that phrase echoed in the department for years, passed around in locker rooms and late-night patrols. By the early 2000s, technology began to catch up with the whispers. A viral video surfaced in 2004, recorded on a flip phone by two teenagers daring each other to cross the bridge at midnight. The footage is grainy, but the screams are clear. The teens are laughing, taunting each other, when suddenly one gasps and points. A figure appears at the far end of the bridge, tall, unmoving. The boys curse, trying to convince each other it's a prank, but when the camera swings back a second later, the figure is gone. Moments later, the video cuts to chaos. The camera jerks, one boy shouting for the other, then only static. When police investigated, only one of the teenagers was found unconscious by the rail. The other was never seen again. The boy who survived refused to talk for years. When he finally broke his silence in a podcast interview, he only said it wasn't a man. It was something else. Since then, the bridge has been the subject of documentaries, paranormal investigations, and late-night thrill seekers. Each time, the story deepens. Some claim the deaths coincide with certain dates anniversaries of old accidents. Others suggest the foundations of the bridge were laid over something older, something not meant to be disturbed. A few even whisper about Chicago's violent past, about gangland murders and bodies dumped in the river during Prohibition, their restless spirits clinging to the place where they were discarded. And yet, despite its reputation, the city has never shut the bridge down. Repairs are made when necessary, new paint coats, the rusting beams, but the structure remains. Commuters still drive across daily, most unaware of its dark history. Only at night does its true face reveal itself. Taxi drivers avoid it after certain hours. Longtime residents warn newcomers never to walk it alone. What makes this mystery so enduring is not just the deaths, but the patterns. Families report receiving phone calls from loved ones minutes before they vanish on the bridge. The line filled with static and distant rushing water. Drivers claim their GPS malfunctions as they approach, the signal dropping until they are halfway across. And investigators, even skeptics, admit that the bridge has a pull unlike anywhere else. "It's not just superstition," said one retired detective who worked 2 separate cases tied to the site. "It's like the place wants to be fed." The question remains, why this bridge? Why here? Among the dozens in Chicago, does this one stretch of steel and concrete hold such a record of tragedy? Some turn to folklore, pointing to the belief that water can act as a veil between worlds. Others point to history, noting that the river once served as a dumping ground for victims of organized crime. Still others whisper about engineering flaws, claiming vibrations or magnetic fields cause hallucinations. But no theory has ever fully explained the disappearances, the drownings, the sightings, or the chilling sense of dread that settles over anyone who lingers too long on its span. As night falls and the fog thickens, the bridge becomes something else entirely. It's not just a structure anymore, it feels alive, listening, waiting. And for those who dare to cross, the question is always the same. Will you make it to the other side? Or will you become another name on the list of those the bridge has claimed? The bridge's mystery deepened in the winter of 2007, when an off-duty firefighter named Daniel Ruiz was driving home after a late shift. He was a seasoned man, not prone to fear or superstition, and had driven the route hundreds of times before. Yet that night, something was different. Snowflakes fell in thick, blinding curtains, and the river below churned with sheets of ice. Daniel called his wife around 1:14 a.m., saying he'd be home within 20 minutes. That call was the last time anyone heard his voice. At 2 a.m., police discovered his truck parked on the shoulder of the bridge, engine still running, heater blowing warm air, and headlights cutting through the storm. The driver's side door was wide open. Inside, Daniel's badge and wallet sat untouched, but Daniel himself was gone. No footprints in the snow, no struggle, no sign of a fall over the rails. It was as if he had stepped out of his vehicle and vanished into thin air. The official report listed him as a missing person. His wife, devastated, refused to believe he simply walked away. "He wouldn't have left us," she said tearfully on local news. Something took him. Daniel's case ignited a new wave of fear. The bridge wasn't just claiming strangers, troubled souls, or late-night thrill-seekers anymore. It had taken one of Chicago's own, a firefighter, a husband, a father. The media swarmed the story, dubbing it the vanishing on River Point Bridge. Journalists dug up old records, comparing the case to other disappearances. What they found was disturbing. Dozens of nearly identical incidents, stretching back decades, often dismissed as suicides or accidents. People walking across and never making it to the other side. Cars found empty, engines humming, headlights still burning. As investigators combed through the files, a chilling realization emerged. Many of the disappearances occurred on the same nights of the year, late January, early March, mid-October. Dates that, when cross-referenced, aligned with old shipping logs from the 1920s and 30s. Those records showed barge accidents, river drownings, and gangland executions carried out near the same waters. Could it be coincidence? Or was there a darker rhythm pulsing beneath the city, one that demanded payment on certain nights? Local residents certainly had their theories. One older man, interviewed outside his corner store near the bridge, claimed the site was cursed from the very beginning. "That river," he muttered, pointing with a trembling hand, "is full of secrets. Men dumped bodies there when Al Capone ran this town. The bridge was built on top of bones, and bones don't forget." Another resident told a reporter that her grandmother used to warn children never to whistle while crossing the span, because the sound might wake the drowned. Skeptics, of course, dismissed such tales. Structural engineers argued that the bridge's design created strange vibrations, especially in foggy conditions, that could disorient drivers and pedestrians. Psychologists suggested mass hysteria, fueled by decades of urban legends, caused people to perceive threats where none existed, and police insisted that most of the cases were explainable suicides. Foul play elsewhere, or simply people running away from their lives. But those explanations never satisfied the families of the missing. One of the most haunting moments came during a candlelight vigil for Daniel Ruiz. Held on the bridge itself in the spring of 2008, his family and supporters gathered with candles, their reflections flickering in the dark water below. As prayers were said and names of other victims read aloud, several attendees reported hearing faint cries echoing from beneath the bridge. At first, they thought it was someone playing a cruel prank, but the sound grew louder, desperate, like voices rising through water. Some claimed they heard Daniel's name whispered. Others said it was dozens of voices overlapping, too many to count. The police on duty brushed it off as the wind, but those who were there swore it was something else, something that still haunts them to this day. By 2011, Bridge was firmly cemented in local lore. Paranormal investigators flocked to it armed with night vision cameras, EMF detectors, and recorders. One team captured a chilling EVP during a midnight session, a whisper that said, "Get out," followed by the sound of rushing water, even though no one nearby heard it at the time. Another group claimed their equipment shut down simultaneously as they reached the midpoint of the bridge. Their batteries drained in seconds. A member of that crew later confided, "It felt like we were standing inside a mouth that was about to close." But the most unsettling testimony didn't come from ghost hunters or thrill seekers. It came from first responders. Several paramedics admitted off-record that they dreaded calls near the bridge. One described a night when a man was pulled from the river, barely conscious, his skin pale and lips blue. As they loaded him into the ambulance, the man clutched the medic's arm and whispered, "Don't take me back there. It won't let me go twice." Before they reached the hospital, his heart stopped. Stories like these fueled an online community obsessed with the bridge. Reddit threads exploded with theories ranging from electromagnetic anomalies to government cover-ups. Some users pointed out that cell service notoriously drops near the center of the bridge, even though coverage in the rest of the city is strong. Others claimed to have dreams about the bridge before they ever visited Chicago, dreams of fog, cold metal, and unseen hands pulling them downward. The city, however, continued to downplay it all. In 2013, after a series of fatal crashes, officials announced safety upgrades, stronger guardrails, better lighting, and surveillance cameras. But oddly, the cameras often malfunctioned at crucial times. Footage from the night of one disappearance was later released, showing a car stopping near the midpoint of the bridge. The driver's door opens, but the frame glitches, the screen distorting into static for nearly 20 seconds. When the feed clears, the car is empty. The door is still ajar. Technicians blamed a power surge, but skeptics saw it as proof that something more sinister was at work. Through all of this, the bridge remained. Commuters still used it daily, unaware of its reputation, while locals shook their heads, warning newcomers not to tempt fate. Yet the stories never stopped. Each year brought fresh accounts, new victims, new mysteries, new whispers in the fog. And for those who lived in the city long enough, the bridge became more than a landmark. It became a question whispered late at night: if you cross it alone, will you make it to the other side? Or will you join the countless souls the river has already claimed? By 2015, the bridge was no longer just an eerie landmark. It had become a battleground between skeptics and believers. Local news stations ran features every Halloween, highlighting its grisly history, while ghost tours companies added it as a final stop on their midnight routes. But beneath the theatrics and folklore, the tragedy continued. That spring, a college student named Maria Alvarez vanished after attending a late-night study session with friends. Security cameras showed her leaving the library, bundled in a heavy coat, her backpack slung across one shoulder. Her last text to her roommate read simply, "Crossing the bridge now. Be back soon." She never arrived. By morning, her phone was found lying on the pedestrian walkway, screen cracked, still glowing faintly. Her backpack was discovered days later, floating in the river downstream. but Maria's body was never recovered. Her disappearance hit the community hard. Maria was bright, ambitious, the first in her family to attend college. Vigils were held, posters plastered across the city, but no answers came. For her parents, the bridge wasn't just cursed, it was a thief that had stolen their daughter. If she fell, her mother sobbed during an interview, we would have found her. If someone took her, there'd be signs. But there's nothing. Just the bridge. Maria's case drew renewed attention from investigative journalists. One reporter, James Klein, made it his mission to uncover the truth. He spent months interviewing families, digging through police reports, and tracing every incident tied to the structure. What he uncovered was staggering. Over 70 unexplained deaths and disappearances linked to the bridge since its construction. Most had been written off as suicides or accidents, but patterns emerged. Many victims were healthy, with no history of depression. Others had planned appointments, family events, dreams they were about to pursue. Few left notes or signs of intention, and in case after case, the details were eerily similar. Cars left running, belongings untouched, bodies never recovered. Klein's reporting was published as a long-form article titled "The Hungry Bridge of Chicago." It went viral, sparking debates across the city and beyond. Some hailed him as brave, finally shining a light on decades of negligence. Others accused him of exploiting grief for clicks, but Klein insisted he was chasing the truth, no matter how unsettling. "There's something wrong with that bridge," he told a local radio host. "Either it's hiding crimes we haven't uncovered, or it's something we can't yet explain. But either way, ignoring it won't make it stop." Shortly after the article's release, Klein experienced something that shook even his skepticism. Driving home one foggy night, he decided to cross the bridge deliberately, hoping to observe what so many had described. Halfway across, his car radio began to crackle, flipping between stations. He reached for the dial, only to hear his own voice. His interview from the radio show days earlier, echoing back at him through the static. Startled, he pulled over, fumbling for his phone to record the moment. The audio cut off suddenly, replaced by silence so complete, he said it felt like the world had been muted. Then from the passenger seat beside him, he swore he heard a whisper. Turn back. Terrified, Klein sped across the rest of the bridge without looking back. He wrote about the incident later, admitting he couldn't fully explain it. Critics accused him of embellishing. The fear in his words convinced many he had truly encountered something beyond reason. Meanwhile, the families of victims pushed for more answers. Lawsuits were filed against the city, demanding better surveillance and safety measures. Some claimed negligence. Others went so far as to accuse officials of covering up crimes. One attorney suggested that the bridge served as a dumping ground for organized crime even in modern times, and that corruption prevented deeper investigations. Too many unanswered questions, too many missing bodies, he told reporters. This isn't just superstition, it's systematic failure. But even as theories multiplied, the bridge itself remained unchanged. Construction crews patched potholes, repainted lines, and checked guardrails. But no new safety measures could explain away the supernatural undercurrent. For the people who lived nearby, the bridge wasn't just infrastructure, it was a predator. And predators don't stop because someone files a lawsuit. In 2018, the predator struck again. A group of 4 friends live-streamed their late-night walk across the bridge, laughing and joking as viewers commented in real time. About 6 minutes into the video, something strange happened. The group grew quiet, glancing around nervously. The livestream audio picked up a faint, rhythmic sound like footsteps matching theirs but heavier. "Who's behind us?" one girl asked, her voice uneasy. They turned the camera, but the walkway was empty. Moments later, the feed glitched, the picture breaking into static. When it returned, one of the 4 was gone. Panic erupted as the remaining 3 screamed her name, their camera jerking wildly. Police responded quickly, but the missing girl was never found. The livestream, archived by countless viewers, spread across social media, cementing the bridge's reputation worldwide. After that, the site became a magnet for thrill seekers. Influencers filmed themselves crossing at night, daring the curse to take them. Paranormal vloggers staged elaborate investigations. Some left with eerie footage, others with nothing but shaky flashlights and nervous laughter. But for those who truly believed, the bridge wasn't entertainment. It was a wound in the city, and every new victim was proof it wasn't healing. Amid the chaos, a chilling story circulated among first responders once again. A police officer claimed that during a late-night patrol, he spotted a woman standing at the edge of the bridge, her hair long and wet, her dress clinging to her frame. Thinking it was a potential jumper, he rushed over, calling out for her to stop. She turned to face him, and he froze. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale, and her lips parted in a grim smile. Then, before he could react, she stepped backward and vanished. No splash, no trace, nothing. The officer, shaken, never filed an official report, but his story spread quickly among colleagues. Some called it stress. Others whispered he had seen one of the bridge's victims, still trapped between this world and whatever lies beneath. By 2019, fear had turned to obsession. Books were written, documentaries produced, podcasts recorded. Each offered new theories. Ley lines beneath the city, cursed steel from a collapsed building, or even the idea that the river itself was alive, pulling people into its depths. But none offered closure. The deaths, the disappearances, the whispers, they all continued. And the bridge, looming silently, seemed to watch it all. The year 2020 brought with it not only a global pandemic, but also a new chapter in the bridge's haunting history. With streets quieter and fewer cars crossing at night, many believed the curse would sleep, undisturbed by the absence of its usual prey. But for some, the emptier roads only made the bridge feel more alive. Reports began to spike, not of disappearances this time, but of sightings. Residents in nearby apartments claimed that late at night, when the city was unusually silent, they heard footsteps echoing across the steel structure. One woman swore she saw a figure standing at the center of the bridge for nearly an hour, unmoving even as rain poured around it. When she blinked, the figure was gone. Another man described hearing cries carried on the wind, voices calling his name despite the fact he lived alone. These accounts might have been brushed aside as quarantine-induced paranoia. But then came the night of April 14th. That evening, a delivery driver named Marcus Young was heading home after dropping off his last order. His dashcam recorded everything. Around 2:37 a.m., he approached the bridge, muttering to himself about the long shift. Halfway across, the audio picked up a metallic clang, like someone striking the rail. Startled, Marcus slowed down, his headlights cutting through the fog. Then, from the shadows, a figure appeared, a man soaked to the bone, stumbling across the lanes. Marcus braked hard, swerving slightly to avoid hitting him. The figure stopped, turned its head, and stared directly into the dashcam. His face was pale, lips blue, eyes dark hollows. The moment lasted only seconds before the figure dissolved into mist, vanishing completely. Marcus uploaded the footage online, swearing it wasn't staged. Experts analyzed it, debating endlessly. Some called it the most convincing evidence yet, while skeptics accused him of editing. But one detail silenced the skeptics for many. When the figure's face was enhanced, several viewers recognized him. It bore a striking resemblance to Daniel Ruiz, a firefighter who had vanished years earlier. The video reignited old grief. Daniel's widow wept when shown the footage, saying softly, "That's him. I know it is, but he looks wrong." Paranormal investigators latched onto the idea that the bridge didn't just take lives. It trapped them, imprinting their souls in some twisted limbo. To them, Marcus's dashcam was proof that the victims were not gone, but lingering, pulled back into the city's world only to remind the living of their fate. If the bridge had been infamous before, now it was a global obsession. Ghost hunters traveled from across the country, braving the fog to test their luck. TikTok flooded with clips of people daring each other to walk alone at midnight, their shaky phone cameras capturing shadows, orbs, or unexplained noises. One clip showed a girl standing at the midpoint, whispering into her mic, "I can hear them breathing." The video cut off abruptly. Her account deactivated hours later. The Chicago Police Department, exhausted by the constant calls and reports, finally issued a statement: the bridge is not haunted. It is not cursed. It is a structure, nothing more. Yet even they couldn't ignore the growing number of emergency calls tied to the site. Between 2020 and 2021, 27 separate 911 calls originated from cell phones pinged on the bridge. In most cases, responders arrived to find nothing: no caller, no accident, just an abandoned phone left behind, screen flashing, lines still open. By 2022, rumors took on a darker edge. People began to whisper that the bridge wasn't just haunted, it was hungry. A theory spread that every soul it claimed fed the entity tied to it, an entity that grew stronger with each tragedy. One anonymous post on an online forum claimed to be from a city worker involved in maintenance. The writer described finding strange etchings beneath the steel beams, symbols carved deep into the concrete, almost like wards or warnings. They weren't part of the original design, the post read, and they looked old. Older than the bridge itself. The post was quickly deleted, but screenshots circulated widely, adding to the unease. Local historian uncovered records of the riverbank before the bridge was built. In the 1800s, the site had been the location of a shantytown ravaged by fire and disease. Hundreds died there, their graves poorly marked, if at all. When the city expanded, those graves were paved over. The dead were forgotten, the historian explained, but places remember, as chilling as the theories were. Nothing compared to the tragedy of October 2022. A school bus carrying high school students back from a late game broke down on the bridge. As the driver radioed for assistance, the students began to live stream their boredom. What began as laughter turned to panic as several of them claimed to see figures outside the windows, faces pressed against the glass, hands smearing across the surface, though the bus was surrounded only by fog. The streams showed chaos, students screaming, phones dropping, the driver yelling for everyone to stay calm. When police finally arrived, the bus was empty. Every student, every bag, every trace of life was gone. Only the driver remained unconscious in his seat. The incident shook the city to its core. Officials scrambled to explain it, suggesting foul play, though how dozens of teenagers could vanish without a trace on a guarded bridge defied all logic. The driver, when he awoke, refused to speak. His eyes darted constantly, and he flinched at the sound of running water. He was placed under psychiatric care, never returning to his job. For parents and families, it was the final straw. Protests erupted, demanding the bridge be closed permanently. "It's a death trap," one grieving father shouted on live TV. How many more lives before the city admits the truth? Petitions circulated, amassing thousands of signatures. But shutting down such a crucial artery of traffic wasn't simple. Officials promised new investigations, more patrols, stronger surveillance, but deep down, many residents felt it was pointless. How do you fight something that isn't bound by the rules of the living? And still, the bridge loomed, indifferent to outrage or grief. At night, its steel bones groaned, fog curling like fingers around its beams. And as always, the question lingered: was it cursed, haunted, or simply a dark reminder of how much a city can bury beneath progress? By 2023, the bridge was no longer just an urban legend, it was a wound, a scar that refused to heal. Families of the missing gathered every year at its entrance, holding vigils with candles flickering in the wind, their lights swallowed by the ever-present fog. Some prayed, some cursed, and some simply stared into the darkness, as if waiting for their loved ones to walk back out. The city, under pressure, commissioned a full-scale investigation unlike anything attempted before. Not just engineers and police, but historians, psychologists, and even paranormal researchers were quietly invited. The bridge was shut down for a month, the first closure in its history. Cameras, sensors, and drones were deployed across every inch of its surface. Night after night, they monitored. The footage, however, raised more questions than answers. One drone caught a ripple in the air, like heat rising from asphalt, except it hovered in place, pulsing faintly before vanishing. Another camera recorded what appeared to be faint silhouettes crossing the bridge in perfect unison, though no one was there. A thermal imaging device detected sudden drops in temperature, forming shapes resembling human bodies. Yet whenever investigators rushed to confirm, they found only empty steel and mist. Some experts theorized that the bridge was a thin, place, a location where the veil between worlds was weaker, allowing echoes of the dead to slip through. Others dismissed it as mass hysteria amplified by decades of tragedy. But then came the recording from Night to 7 at precisely 3:11 a.m. Every camera feed glitched simultaneously. When the systems came back online, the central monitor displayed something chilling. Dozens of figures standing across the bridge shoulder to shoulder. Their faces were blurry, distorted, but recognizable to those who had studied the missing. Daniel Ruiz, the young mother from 1995. Several of the high school students from the bus. They stood silently, staring directly into the lens. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they melted back into the fog, leaving nothing but the hum of the river below. The footage was never released publicly. Officials claimed the systems had malfunctioned, but rumors spread quickly, whispered first among the research team, then through the city, and finally the world. Conspiracy boards lit up. They saw them, the dead are trapped, the city's hiding the truth for residents. It was confirmation of what they'd always suspected. The bridge didn't just take lives, it kept them. But the city faced a problem: what to do with a bridge that had become both infamous and essential. Destroying it was considered, but engineers warned of collapse risks spreading into the river, disrupting crucial trade routes. Rebuilding elsewhere would cost billions. And even if the bridge were gone, would the curse simply shift to another stretch of steel and water? After all, curses were never bound by concrete alone. As debates raged, the bridge continued to claim victims. A cyclist disappeared on a foggy morning, his bike later found mangled against the rail. A rideshare passenger was reported missing after texting her friend, "Something's wrong." The driver isn't talking. Both the passenger and driver vanished. Their car abandoned in the center lane with doors wide open. Each new story layered more dread onto the old. One final attempt at explanation came from a group of independent researchers in 2024. They proposed that the bridge acted as a kind of resonance chamber, amplifying human fears until they manifested physically. The victims, one researcher wrote, are not merely lost. They're pulled into the city's memory, a collective shadow where trauma repeats endlessly. It was poetic, yes, but hardly satisfying to the grieving families who wanted closure. That summer, something extraordinary happened. A local musician, grieving the loss of his cousin to the bridge years earlier, set up on the riverbank with his guitar. For hours, he played, singing songs of remembrance. Onlookers later claimed that as his voice carried across the water, the fog seemed too thin. Some swore they saw faces in the mist, not twisted or hollow, but peaceful, watching silently before fading into the night. Was it imagination? Or had music reached where science and prayer had failed? Stories like these gave rise to a new tradition. Families began leaving offerings at the bridge, flowers, photographs, letters tucked into the rails. Some believed it soothed the restless spirits. Others called it futile. But for those who had lost, it was something to hold on to. Something that made the unbearable slightly less so. Still, the question lingered. Was the bridge cursed? Or was it a mirror reflecting the weight of Chicago's forgotten dead? Perhaps it was both, a place where tragedy had soaked so deeply into steel and stone that it could never be washed away. In the end, the bridge remained. Its structure, battered by time but unbroken, continued to span the river. By day, it bustled with cars, bikes, and pedestrians, just another piece of the city's machinery. But by night, it breathed differently. Fog curled tighter. The water below whispered louder, and those who dared to cross at 3 a.m. often quickened their steps, refusing to look into the shadows at their side, because whether cursed, haunted, or simply heavy with history, the bridge had claimed its place in Chicago's soul. It was not just steel and bolts. It was a reminder, a warning, a story written in the lives it had swallowed. And if you ever find yourself walking alone across that bridge, when the city is quiet and the river sighs beneath you, remember this: The faces of the lost are still there, waiting in the fog, watching, listening, wondering who will be next.